Buongiorno everybody. What a beautiful rest day atmosphere. The sun's shining, we've got some fantastic caffeine to help us along. Need plenty of that, don't we, after week 2 of the Giro D'Italia? And what a Giro it has been. Roberto's along, well, not the real one. You've got to put up with me, I'm afraid. We did, though, get some real assistance in the Gruppetto this week from Luke Rowe. He's along to talk past, present and future and to dissect what's happened at this Giro D'Italia so far. Without further ado then, let's get into the Gruppetto and recap what a second week it's been at this race.
The Giro d'Italia resumed after a rest day of ice cream, pizza and coffee stops in Naples, and they'd need the fueling too, as the race returned straight away to the mountains. A new finish at Bocca della Selva gave a chance to the breakaway, with race leader Tadej Pogacar not seeing any real threat in the day's move. Valentin Paré-Peintre grabbed his opportunity gloriously. A year ago, his older brother Aurélien took a maiden bit of Grand Tour success at the Giro, but this was Paré-Peintre Jr.'s first ever pro win. 24 hours later, less mountains and a nice tailwind helped the peloton on to Francavilla al Mare, crossing 4 different Italian regions along the way. Kian Uijtdebroeks was in the white jersey before he had to leave the race on the morning of the stage. He'd been ill overnight. So Antonio Tiberi took on the Maglia Bianca, and at the end of the day, Jonathan Milan increased his lead in the Maglia Ciclamino competition, winning a mad sprint on the Adriatic coast. 4 minutes of madness became 4 hours on stage 12. A special stage, one that will be remembered for a long time. After being told in the winter to quit his messing around by his boss Lefebvre, Julian Alaphilippe responded with a message to you, Patrick. They'll now have to think of his future, because the former 2 times world champion was on a mission from the start, on a day ridden at warp speed. After forcing his way into the breakaway following an opening 50 kilometres that passed in the blink of an eye, he attacked that group with 125 kilometres still to ride. Experienced Italian breakaway boy Mirko Maestri was along for the ride, and he had to grit his teeth on the many short and steep climbs in the Marche region. But after so long since any success of note, it would be Soudal-QuickStep's flamboyant Frenchman who took it to the line, riding away on the final climb and finishing things off alone, reminiscent of Peter Sagan's final Grand Tour hurrah in this part of Italy. This, though, was Alaphilippe alla grande. Lulu and the rest of the bunch was serenaded by a version of the Italian national anthem at the start on day 13. Unlucky for anyone hoping for any more climbing, because this was the Pan Flat, or given the start in Romagna, the Piadina stage. The flattest competitive day that most will have ever ridden in their entire careers. The wind blew again though, and briefly there was a split. But after Milan missed out, his team failed to panic. Not only that, then they produced one of the best lead-outs of the season so far, controlling, positioning and firing through the final technical corners. Lidl-Trek's big giant of a sprinter then laid down the power and strengthened his already ironclad grip on the points competition. A third Milan stage win of this Giro in Cento. 31 kilometres more of time trialling were next up, and all eyes were on another possible Ganna versus Pogacar battle. This was a flatter course, so the Italian was the firm favourite. But with the Slovenian faster at the first time split, the local star cut a nervous figure once more in the hot seat. It wasn't going to happen again, was it? Fortunately for Filippo and a large Italian crowd, it wasn't. Pog put in another sensational time against the clock, extending his GC lead to over 3 minutes. Thomas took second place back from Martinez, but Top Ganna returned to the box office. 3 years after his last stage win at his favourite race, the Giro sequel was finally out. The final stage of the week was the longest stage of this Giro. The Queen stage, the Tappone. This kind of parkour is an endangered species nowadays. 5,500 metres of climbing and 222 kilometres long. You know it's a hard day when the Mortirolo isn't even the headline climb. Travelling from the shores of Lake Garda all the way up to Livigno, high in the mountains on the border with neighbouring Switzerland, a small group of mainly faster riders got a head start for the opening 30 kilometres. But on the first climb, between 40 and 50 riders then made it up the road. The most dangerous was Michael Storer, who sat at almost 10 minutes on the general classification. But UAE Team Emirates seemed to have only one goal, a simple plan, as their leader had said at the beginning of the day. They controlled, they rode, one by one dropping away when there was nothing left to give. And 15 kilometres from the finish, with Georg Steinhauser and Nairo Quintana still fighting it out for the stage seemingly 3 minutes up the road, Pogacar launched from behind. Onlookers were left open-mouthed as the Slovenian was sensational. The time gaps disappeared into the thin mountain air, and on a day he was born to attack, the greatest all-rounder of his generation went about winning a 4th stage at this race. He wrote another prestigious victory on his palmarès, adding to his legend, and almost doubling his GC lead in the process. It was incredible. And at the end of week 2, with a lead of 6 minutes and 41 seconds over Thomas, Pogacar has the biggest stage 15 gap in the Giro for 70 years. Elsewhere, the latest Spanish block of racing for the women continued in Burgos, and the race began with a shock as Elisa Balsamo was involved in a nasty crash at the end of the first stage. Lotta Hentala won just ahead of that, while Lorena Wiebes bounced back to win the other sprint 2 days later. In terms of the overall, it was all about Demi Vollering. It's now 3 stage races ridden this season, all in the last month, all in Spain, and all won. This time the Dutch superstar took 2 of the 4 stages, pulling on the race leader's jersey on day 2 and carrying it through to the finish. Evita Muzic continued her recent solid form and was Vollering's closest rival. Further north, a long wait was ended, but in such a fashion that Sam Bennett and his new Decathlon Age Desert team would say that it was worth that wait. The Irish star, a former green jersey winner at the Tour de France, hadn't taken a single victory since joining the French outfit in the winter and was coming off a couple of fairly barren seasons by his high standards. But at the 4 days of Dunkirk, Bennett put in a truly dominant performance, winning 4 of the 6 stages. He was left pretty in the pink leader's jersey and doing his best poggy pose too. His team are now only second to Pogacar's UAE in the number of wins this season. It's now 20 up for Decathlon.
Plenty of that needed, sorry. Now then, this week we've had Luke Rowe in the commentary box. It's been absolutely fantastic having some recent insight into the peloton. Luke, a top domestique, is about to retire. He announced his retirement just a couple of weeks ago after suffering from some pretty bad concussion of late. But we've been picking his brains, so let's get to it. A nice chat with Luke Rowe before he joined us in the commentary box. So we're into the second week of the Giro D'Italia. Luke Rowe's come and join us in commentary this week, and he stopped by the Gruppetto, a habitual place for you, showing me the ropes, how it's done. Have you enjoyed the last few weeks watching the telly?
Yeah, it's been exciting. Of course, being on the sidelines now with injury, watching racing is a little bit bittersweet. But at the same time, first of all, it's been exciting racing. Secondly, I think on behalf of our team, we've ridden a great first 10 days. Exciting, tenacious, been quite big, had big role to play. So yeah, it's been exciting, a little bit bittersweet, but yeah, you have to take the positives, and that is the Giro's on.
Well, bittersweet, you've announced your retirement at the end of this season because of the concussions that you've been experiencing. I think you thought that it was the right time. Tell us a little bit about how you arrived at that decision.
Yeah, so it's just kind of that one big hit really. I had a few before, but this one was just kind of the nail in the coffin. And you know, as I was going to do one more year anyway, so it's been cut short by 12 months, and I'm obviously missing a lot this year. But like you said, it's just the right time, and you know, you got responsibilities now. It's not just me. I've got 2 kids and amazing wife, and you know, I don't want to kind of hamper myself further down the line and regret doing that one more year and potentially having another knock and another setback. So yeah, it is what it is. At first, you're pretty gutted and disappointed, but I think you got to take the positives, and that is that I've been lucky enough to have 13 years doing something that I've loved. I look back and I had fun, man. It was genuine fun. Had a certain level of success, and that was great. You know, I was no superstar, but I had my role and I did my bit, and that was great. But when I look back, I just smile. I'm happy, you know. I'm happy, and you can't put a price on that.
Well, wins at home in the Tour of Britain, being on the podium. with several different riders winning the Tour de France. I mean, there's not many more successful domestique stroke road captains than you in the Tour de France in the last few years. I mean, you look back, you've got quite some achievements.
No, exactly, and I think it's only when you get to the end and you do a lot of reminiscing and reflecting, and you look back, the highs, the lows, blood, sweat, and tears, and there's been a lot of everything. No, certainly you can play it down, but yeah, realistically, I did have a good career and one that I can be proud of. Like you say, being part of 5 Tour de France victories with 3 different riders, that's the pinnacle for me. I could never be at the top of the Tour de France or anywhere near myself, so that's the closest I can get. So no, I think I'm proud of what I achieved. I did some good stuff, made a few mistakes, but no regrets. I loved it, so yeah.
Who doesn't make any mistakes in any walk of life?
Exactly, mate, yeah.
Different leaders, you mentioned winning with 3 different riders.
Yeah.
How different were they all to ride for?
Yeah, very different, because, well, Froome was already my first tour. He was already established. He was the superstar that we know. So it wasn't a big shock. We kind of went in as favourites, and at that point he was the creme de la creme, and we went in expecting to win, and if we didn't win, it would be a failure. Which is actually a really tough situation to be in. So the first 3 were with him, and that was amazing. But then the G1 was obviously, he'd won the Dauphiné, and going into the Tour, he was like backup leader. But did we ever really think he could win the Tour? The Tour is the Tour. It just seemed like this massive mountain, and he did it. And obviously, I don't have to go into mine and G's relationship. It's pretty special, and that's the standout one for me. Winning it with him, obviously. And then Egan was also a bit of a shock, and yeah, so that was special. But yeah, G's the standout one. They've obviously got their different characteristics as leaders, their different ways of doing things, but all special. But that G one was obviously the top.
And just for the viewers, I mean, with Geraint, you were racing since, I don't know, how old were you when you started racing together? Down in South Wales?
Yeah, that's it, mate. It's hard to pinpoint the exact age, but I reckon we must have been 8, 10. He's a couple of years older. And it was like the type of relationship where you spend time together, and as kids you go out on the bike and you go, I'm going to pretend to be Pantani today, and you can, as football players do, as kids do with football players, and then to think, fast forward, and that's something G actually said when I told him about retirement. He said, mate, if you could tell yourself 15, 20 years ago, or even 13 years ago, the start of your career, that you would do that and we would go on to do this together, you'd have snapped my hand off if I was to offer you that. So just be proud and be happy, and yeah, pretty cool.
Fairy tale stuff, really, when you think about it.
It is really, yeah. And I think, you can glamorize it and how beautiful and amazing it is, and I just feel fortunate, to be honest. I think how many people get to go on that journey for as long as I have, and with the people I've met, it's just it's pretty special when you stop and actually think, because when you're going from year to year, race to race, you're just on this conveyor belt. Yeah. Next week, this race, training camp, this race, form, condition, weight, and there's so many factors, and you're constantly thinking, but you're just on this conveyor belt. Yeah. But then when you actually stop and you go, look what has happened and what we've achieved, and like I said, the highs and the lows, this reminiscence can be quite a fun thing to do. So yeah, I think I need to be happy.
Are you going to go back to Wales? Are you going to stay where you are in southern France?
No, back to God's country, where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. Home, I was always going to go back to Wales. Yeah, it's where my family is. It's where my heart is. I love it. It's obviously got its positives and negatives. It's not really known for its beautiful climate, is it? So we'll have to pack the wellies and the raincoats. But apart from that, I'm a proud Welshman. I love it there. I've got the sport there, the Cardiff Devils, the Cardiff City, the Cardiff Blues. I love all the sport. Obviously got the Millennium Stadium. So it's just great back there.
I got a soft spot I went to university in North Wales. I've got a soft spot for Wales. Okay. And as a country, you really punch above your weight. And that's another thing. You and Geraint going back there now, and a Tour de France winner a men's Tour de France winner from Wales. I mean, again, something that growing up you'd have only dreamt about, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's even if you look outside of Wales and as GB, there was, when I started watching bike racing on TV, it was if one Brit was riding the Tour de France, or one or two Brits, or any race, that would be quite a big accomplishment. And now you turn on any race, and not only is there 5, 10, 15 Brits in the race, there's often a Brit who can win the race. So not just how far we've come as a country in Wales, but as GB, we've really put the sport on the map, and that's another thing to have played a small part in that, and representing Wales GB and my trade team, just the way the sport has come on for, a relatively small cycling nation. Well, it was. Just to see that progress over my career has been pretty special as well.
What about the whole sport? Because that's progressed. That's changed beyond recognition, hasn't it? I imagine the practices you do, all the talk about nutrition the last couple of years, training, the people who are in it, the way it's ridden.
Yeah.
We're on telly from kilometre zero now. We've been talking this week on the coverage about how that changes racing. Yeah. I mean, just some of the highlights for you maybe of how it's changed since you started.
In my 13 years, it's chalk and cheese. It really is. I think the biggest one is just simply the speed of the racing. You see the facts and figures now, and throughout the classics, it was like, that was the fastest ever Paris-Roubaix, that was the fastest ever Tour of Flanders, that was the fastest ever Newsblad, that was the fastest ever Kern. Every race were breaking records, and that's the biggest factor, is the speed. And then you can go into why is the speed increasing, and it's attention to detail. People, big teams, small teams, superstars, domestiques, across the board, people are just crossing the T's and dotting their I's, and they're going into small details. And when it was, we were notorious for that, and we were really focused on that. But now it's everyone across the board, and everyone's doing things right. Training, nutrition, the kit, everything is gold standard. So, and as a consequence of that, the speed is going faster than ever, which is, it's not a bad thing. It's great. It's exciting. We got the Giro on. We're looking at now, it's 100k to go, and you'd say, okay, that's 2 hours to go. Where you'd go, normally that's 2.25, that's 2.5 hours to go. They'll do 50k an hour the last 2 hours. So it's, big changes, but I'd say the biggest one is simply the raw speed of the racing.
Media's changed as well. You're a podcaster now. How did that come about?
Wow, how did that come about? Literally, me and G went to the Tour de France, and we were sat opposite Media World in a big business district. And we said to George, the media guy, should we just get a little recorder and start with a podcast? And it was like, yeah, all right, we'll give it a go. So we laid on our bed, put it in the middle, press play, press record, and off we went. And I don't know how long it's been, 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's just slowly, increased in stature, and it's just a fun thing to do. You sit down with G, we just say it as it is. We've got ourselves in some bit of trouble over the years, but you need a bit of needs to be a bit edgy, or it's boring. It can't be all yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full. So a bit controversial in some ways, but we say as it is, we stand by that, and but it's just fun. It's sitting down and having a chat with a mate like we're doing here, off the cuff, and who would have thought when we were sat on a sofa 4 or 5 years ago that we'd still be doing it, we'd still be enjoying it, and it's grown to where it is now.
Well, we're lucky enough to have you in here with us for the next few days. What's next for you? Are you going to be doing more of this with us, or something that people have often said about you? And Adam Blythe's sitting across us, eating his chicken whilst I ask this very serious question. Bon appetit, as they say in Accrington, Adam. Proper side of the Pennines, that, by the way. Is it? What's next? Would you think about sports directing? Because from your position in the peloton, what you've seen, the way you sort of accompanied your leaders into the right moves. A lot of people have said to me down the years that you'd be good. He's going to be good at that when he retires. Yeah. Is that something that you think about again with all the time away from family, or would you be right on these nice, comfy sofas with us?
Well, it's a trade-off, isn't it? If you did want to go down that DS route, it's a job with a nice stature. It's a job you can do with quite a lot of pride. But with that, it comes with a lot of time away from home. So, with 2 young kids, you want to be there, you want to be present, you want to be there for them. And with the DSing, that's the polar opposite. But I wouldn't rule out doing something, perhaps part-time DSing, X amount of days. I don't know what that entails. It would definitely be good to dip my toe in the water. But I would also want to go down not a stereotypical DS route. I would want to work with the younger guys and within the classics. To go to a Tour de France with a big leader doesn't really excite me. But to go and get a young guy who's maybe struggling to get a contract or has come in a year too early and he's not quite at the game, and to see him achieve success, I think I'd get a lot out of that. And then the classics, I think I could add quite a lot there, just knowing the roads and the way of the racing style. So it's not something I ruled out, but you know, I've come in here for a few days and worked alongside some great people who have really kind of put an arm around my shoulder and helped me along my way, which, you know, I'm grateful for. And I think definitely I need to look at this route, and it's something I enjoy. So this is my stagiaire. This is my first day at work. So yeah, I have to see if I can get a contract and take it from there.
Well, DS, Adam Blythe, team manager's looking on and casting his eye over you. You're about to go, and I better let you go. 97 k's to go. You're supposed to be in commentary 3 kilometres ago, so Adam might be already looking at next season's roster as he tries to get his World Tour squad together and get it sorted.
So I'm late for my
first
day of work.
Shocking,
and I've
shocking.
turned up late.
Good job, you're bloody good at
I'm
it,
in
isn't
trouble. Alrighty,
it? Diolch, Luke. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Take care, mate.
A fascinating insight into past, present and future of professional cycling from Luke Rowe, and of course his debut in the commentary box as well. It's been brilliant hearing him this week. Next week on our live coverage of the Giro d'Italia, we'll have Nata Verhooydonk joining us again. We'll be continuing after his brilliant classics debut with us at Strade Bianche. It's not just the Giro you can watch this week. We've got the Tour of Norway coming up as well. And Verhooydonk's good friend, Wout van Aert, will be back into action. He returns after that crash in the Classics. And of course, 6 more stages to go in the Giro d'Italia. Live on demand, all on Eurosport and Discovery Plus. And for you US viewers, you can watch us on Max. Sorry about that. Well, there's enough meat on the menu of the final week of the Giro d'Italia, isn't there? Mountain after mountain after mountain, and well, all in all, the GC's probably done. There's plenty to go for though, so we skip to dessert. It's pistacchio nocciola, for those of you wondering. What else is there to come then? We've got a couple of sprint stages, we've got those mighty mountain stages, and next week we will be back with a final Giro Gruppetto before we move on to other things to preview the tour. What will we be bringing you? Well, I can tell you right now, we'll be going behind the scenes at Eurosport Studios, the breakaway, the commentary box. Everybody will be there, and we hope you'll be there as well. Thanks for joining us. I'm getting off now, I've got this to finish. Ci vediamo settimana prossima. Ciao.